I've always believed that character shows in the small moments, the kind of choices you make when no one's watching. But that belief was tested one summer evening, on the day I was supposed to meet my future in-laws for the very first time. My name is Daniel Carter, and at that time, I was 27 years old. I wasn't rich, I wasn't flashy, and I certainly didn't belong to the kind of world my girlfriend's parents lived in. But I loved her with a kind of sincerity I couldn't hide if I tried. Her name was Olivia, and she was everything: sharp, funny, elegant in ways that didn't feel rehearsed. So when she told me her parents had finally agreed to meet me, I treated it like an audition for the biggest role of my life. That night, I wore the only tailored suit I owned, a navy blue one I'd bought secondhand, but had altered to fit me perfectly. I rehearsed polite answers in my head as I drove, trying to calm the nerves that made my chest tight. Olivia's parents weren't just wealthy, they were old money wealthy. The kind of people whose last name opened doors, who dined at country clubs, and whose friends' signatures were etched into the foundations of universities. I was running early, which was intentional. I figured arriving 10 minutes ahead would show them I respected their time. But fate had a different plan. Just a few blocks away from their mansion, I noticed a car pulled over on the side of the road. Smoke curled from the hood, and beside it stood an elderly woman, frail and flustered, waving her hands helplessly as cars sped past. I told myself, keep driving. You can't be late tonight. Not tonight. But then I caught a glimpse of her face in my rearview mirror lined with age, eyes darting like she was about to cry. Something inside me just wouldn't let me pass. I pulled over. "Ma'am, do you need help?" I asked as I jogged toward her. "Oh, thank God," she said, her voice trembling. "My car just died and I don't know what to do. My phone's dead too. I've been standing here for half an hour." I loosened my tie, rolled up my sleeves, and got to work. The hood was hot, but I managed to get the latch open. Years of fixing up my own old pickup in college paid off. I knew my way around an engine just enough to get her back on the road. By the time the car sputtered to life again, my watch told me the truth. I was now officially running late. The woman's relief turned to guilt when she noticed my expression. "You had somewhere to be, didn't you?" "Oh, I'm so sorry." I shook my head and forced a smile. "Don't worry about it. Just get home safe, all right?" She reached for my hand, gripping it tightly. "Young man, you may have just saved me tonight. People don't stop anymore. Don't think I'll forget this." Her words warmed me, but as I got back into my car, dread sank in. Olivia had been texting me. "Where are you? Dinner's about to start. Please don't embarrass me, Daniel." My chest clenched. By the time I pulled into the circular driveway of her parents' estate, the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the sprawling mansion bathed in golden lights that made it look less like a house and more like a palace. A valet opened my car door, his glance lingering a moment too long on my modest vehicle. My shoes crunched against gravel as I walked up the wide steps, each one heavier than the last. Inside, the air smelled of roasted meats, polished wood, and faintly of judgment. And then came the sound I feared most, Olivia's mother's voice, slicing through the quiet like glass. "Well," she said, rising from her seat at the long dining table, her gown shimmering under the chandelier. "So the boy finally decides to join us." Her words dripped with disdain. The room fell silent. I opened my mouth to explain, to say something, anything, but her father's voice cut in, cold and deliberate. "Daniel, is it? Do you always arrive late to important engagements?" The heat rose to my face. Something came up. There was an elderly woman on the road, her car. Olivia's mother held up her hand sharply. "Excuses. Always excuses. If you wanted to make a good impression, you would have been here on time." My throat went dry. I glanced at Olivia, searching for her eyes, but she looked down at her plate, lips pressed tight. That's when her mother smiled, a thin, satisfied smile. "You know, Daniel," she said slowly, "our daughter deserves someone who can keep up with her world. Punctuality is the very least we expect. Perhaps tonight has shown us you may not be the match we hoped for." The words landed like a blow. Around the table, I saw the subtle nods of agreement, the polite but cruel smirks. I felt like an intruder in a place I didn't belong. And for a fleeting moment, I wondered if maybe she was right. But little did I know, that single act of kindness on the roadside, what they dismissed as a weakness, would soon become the very thing that turned their entire world upside down. When I finally reached the restaurant, my heart sank. The place was elegant, gleaming chandeliers, velvet curtains, and tables filled with people who looked like they belonged in glossy magazines. I smoothed down my dress, hoping the wrinkles from the frantic drive weren't too noticeable. At the corner table, I spotted Ethan, my fiancé, sitting with his parents. His father's face was stone, unreadable. His mother's lips curved in a smile, but it was the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes. Ethan looked relieved when he saw me, standing quickly to pull out my chair. "You made it," he whispered, though his tone carried more tension than comfort. I sat, feeling every pair of eyes on me. "Late," his father said simply, his voice deep and deliberate. "That's unfortunate." I swallowed hard. "Yes, I apologize." There was. His mother raised her hand, silencing me gently but firmly. "We'll hear your explanation, but first, let's order. Hungry people tend to be less forgiving, don't you think?" Her laugh was polite, but her gaze was sharp. Menus were handed out, and I noticed immediately how little I understood. French dishes, names that twisted on my tongue. Ethan leaned closer, whispering suggestions, but my nerves made it impossible to focus. I ordered the first thing he mentioned just to get it over with. Then, his father leaned back in his chair, studying me. So he began, "Punctuality is a mark of respect. When meeting someone important, especially for the first time, one should arrive early. Don't you agree?" My cheeks burned. "I do. Absolutely. And I truly didn't intend." He cut me off. Intentions matter little when the result is the same. Ethan shifted uncomfortably beside me. "Dad." "No, Ethan," his father said sharply. "This is important." He turned back to me. "Why were you late?" The table went silent. Even the clinking of cutlery from nearby diners seemed to fade. I took a breath. This was the moment. The truth. "There was an elderly woman on the side of the road," I said, my voice trembling. "Her car had broken down. She was alone, and it was dangerous where she was stopped. I couldn't just leave her there. So I helped her get her car started again before coming here. I waited, praying for some flicker of understanding." Ethan's mother tilted her head, her painted smile never faltering. "How noble." But his father's jaw tightened. "So you prioritized a stranger over meeting your fiancé's family? Over showing us that you respect his future?" The weight of his disapproval crashed over me. I wanted to defend myself, to shout that compassion wasn't weakness. But my voice caught in my throat. Ethan reached under the table, squeezing my hand in silent support. Then his mother leaned in slightly, her tone deceptively sweet. "Tell me, dear, was this woman grateful? Did she at least reward you for your kindness?" Her words sliced through me. "Reward?" That wasn't why I had stopped. "No," I said softly. "She didn't reward me. She just smiled and thanked me. That was enough." Her smile sharpened, as if she'd confirmed something she already suspected. So nothing to show for it. Interesting. Heat rose in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. Ethan's father leaned forward. "Let me make this clear. In our family, time is money, and money is respect. You can give away your time if you like, but you will lose our respect in the process." I sat frozen, my appetite gone, my heart hammering. That was when the waiter arrived, placing plates in front of us. The delicate food looked more like art than dinner, but I could barely see straight. I forced myself to take a bite, chewing through the silence. Ethan kept glancing at me, his eyes full of apology, but it was his parents' judgment that lingered in the air like a heavy cloud. Then his mother broke the silence again. "Tell us about your family, dear. What do your parents do?" I hesitated. I didn't come from wealth. My father was a mechanic, my mother a schoolteacher. Honest work, but nothing compared to the polished empire Ethan's parents had built. "They're hardworking people," I said carefully. "My father fixes cars. My mother teaches children." Ethan's mother sipped her wine. How quaint. His father didn't bother with subtlety. "So you come from Greece and chalk dust." The word stabbed, but I lifted my chin. Yes, grease and chalk dust. And love. Plenty of that. For the first time, his father's expression shifted, not softened, but changed. As though my answer surprised him. Still, he leaned back, unimpressed. Love doesn't pay the bills. Love doesn't build empires. I felt Ethan's hand tighten around mine again. He was silently urging me to hold on, to endure. But inside, something stronger than fear stirred. Because I realized in that moment, they were testing me. And I wasn't sure if I was failing or simply refusing to play by their rules. The dinner continued. Every question another sharp edge. Every smile another hidden blade. I answered politely, never raising my voice, but refusing to shrink. And yet, the entire time, one thought pulsed in the back of my mind. If this is what it takes to be accepted, do I even want their approval? Still, for Ethan's sake, I stayed. I smiled. I endured. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. This wasn't just dinner. This was war. By the time we finally pulled into the gated community where Natalie's parents lived, my nerves were shot. My hands were slick on the steering wheel, and my heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. Natalie reached over and squeezed my arm gently. Just be calm, okay? My parents can be intense. But once they see how good you are, they'll warm up. Trust me. Her words were kind, but the shadow in her eyes told me even she wasn't fully convinced. We parked in front of a sprawling white mansion, the kind you see on TV shows about billionaires. A valet in a suit immediately walked over, opening the car door for Natalie like we had just pulled up to a 5-star hotel. I swallowed hard, suddenly feeling underdressed in my blazer. Inside, chandeliers glittered above us and classical music floated softly through the air. The place screamed wealth, but not the warm, cozy kind. This was cold money, shiny, polished, intimidating. At the far end of the massive living room, Natalie's parents stood waiting. Her mother, elegant in a silk dress, sipped wine from a crystal glass. Her father, tall and broad, leaned on a cane, though he didn't seem to need it, more like he enjoyed the dramatic effect. The moment they laid eyes on me, the atmosphere thickened. "You're late." Her father's voice was sharp enough to slice bread. Natalie quickly jumped in. "Dad, it wasn't his fault. There was traffic." Her mother arched a brow, lips curling into a practiced smirk. "Or did your car have issues?" She eyed my sedan like it was something scraped off the bottom of her shoe. Heat rushed up my neck, but I forced a polite smile. "Actually, we stopped to help someone on the road. An elderly woman's car broke down. We couldn't just leave her stranded." The room went quiet for a beat. Her father's jaw tightened. Her mother gave a short, dry laugh. "How noble," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Risking a first impression with us, for a stranger." Natalie's fingers intertwined with mine, grounding me, but the tension was unmistakable. We sat down for dinner at a long mahogany table that looked like it belonged in a royal palace. Servants moved silently, placing plates in front of us. I tried to make small talk, to compliment the house, the art, even the food, but everything I said seemed to land flat. "So," her father finally said, fixing me with a stare that made me shift in my chair, "what exactly is it that you do?" I explained my work, steady, honest, though not glamorous. His eyebrows climbed higher with each word. He muttered. "Not much of a provider, then." Natalie nearly dropped her fork. "Dad," but he just leaned back, swirling his wine. "And tell me, when your car breaks down, and it will, those cheap things always do, how do you plan to get my daughter where she needs to be?" The table felt colder with every second. Natalie's mother smirked like she was enjoying a show. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but something in me said to stay calm. Instead, I said softly, "I believe how a man treats people who can't give him anything in return says more about him than what car he drives." For the first time that night, her father paused. His glass stopped midair. He studied me like he wasn't expecting that response. The silence stretched long enough that I thought I'd blown it. Then her mother let out another dismissive laugh and waved her hand. "Spare us the philosophy. Natalie deserves someone who can take care of her, not someone playing hero on the side of the road." Natalie slammed her napkin on the table. "Enough." He is taking care of me. He's kind. He's loyal. And he actually sees people as human beings, not just dollar signs. Her voice shook with anger. Her mother froze. Her father's lips tightened. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then, faintly, I heard a voice from the entry hall. "Excuse me, sorry to interrupt." We all turned. There she was. The old woman I had helped earlier, her gray hair now tied neatly, her dress simple but clean. She stood at the doorway, clutching a small purse. My jaw nearly hit the floor. What was she doing here? The butler looked nervous. She insisted on speaking with the family, said it was important. Natalie's parents frowned, clearly irritated at the intrusion. But then the old woman stepped forward. Her eyes flicked to me, softening, before turning sharp as steel toward the head of the table. And in that instant, I realized this was about to change everything. The restaurant had gone from noisy and bustling to eerily quiet in seconds. Every pair of eyes was locked on me, the late son-in-law with muddy shoes, a wrinkled shirt, and a grandmother's car keys still in my pocket. Thomas was still smirking across the table, twisting his wine glass like he was already planning his victory speech. My father-in-law, Richard, leaned back with arms crossed, measuring me the way a CEO sizes up a bad investment. But then, something happened. The double doors of the restaurant swung open, and in walked someone no one expected. That same old woman I'd stopped for earlier, her hair tied back now, a neat jacket draped over her frail shoulders. She walked slowly but deliberately, a cane in one hand. And the second Richard saw her, his entire face changed. The color drained from it. His stern posture faltered. "Mother," he whispered. The room gasped. Yes, that old woman, whose car had broken down on the side of the road, was none other than my wife's grandmother, the matriarch of the family. The very woman Richard had been boasting about, claiming she'd be too disappointed in me to stay. She gave a small, knowing smile, and every inch of the restaurant leaned in to listen. "I was on my way here," she said, her voice strong despite her age. "But my car gave up on me. And do you know who stopped to help me? This young man. The one you were all just ridiculing." The silence in the room was deafening. My wife's eyes widened, tears shimmering in them. Thomas nearly dropped his glass. The grandmother continued, tapping her cane against the polished floor. "He didn't know who I was. He didn't ask for anything in return. He just helped because it was the right thing to do. That's character. That's family." Richard tried to recover, clearing his throat. "Mother, we didn't know." But she cut him off with a raised hand. "That's the problem. You didn't know and you didn't care to ask. You judged him by appearances, by lateness, by mud on his shoes. But I know better. And from this moment on, I don't want to hear another word against him." You could feel the weight of her words slam into the room. People shifted uncomfortably, Thomas suddenly finding the floor fascinating. And then, like a final twist of the knife, she walked straight to me, took my hand, and said, "You've already proven yourself to me, son. You're more a part of this family than some who were born into it." The entire restaurant froze. I felt my wife squeeze my other hand, tears now freely streaming down her face. For the first time since meeting her family, I wasn't the outsider. I was the one who had truly passed the test. But what none of us knew was that Thomas wasn't done. And the next thing he did, turned the entire night upside down again. The table had gone so quiet you could hear the silverware settle. Every pair of eyes, cold, shocked, or ashamed, was on me. But it wasn't the silence that held the weight. It was the choice hanging in the air. Harold finally found his voice first. "So, Ethan," he said, leaning back in his chair with a smirk that faltered under his own discomfort. "What is this? A moral test? Some kind of game?" I looked him straight in the eye. "No, this isn't a game. But it is a test of who you are when the cameras aren't rolling, when no one's watching but your own conscience." Marissa's father shifted uncomfortably. Her mother clasped her pearls tighter. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside it was a folded paper with a bank seal, and next to it, a photo of that same old woman's broken-down car, now repaired and shining like it had rolled out of a showroom. "I paid for her repairs," I said, sliding the photo across the table. And then I called in a favor at the dealership where I worked before grad school. She has a reliable car again. That's what made me late. Not because I don't respect you, but because I couldn't walk past someone who needed me. I unfolded the paper slowly, deliberately. And here's the other thing. That woman's name is Eleanor Graves. She's not just some stranger. She's the widow of one of your father's oldest business partners. She used to attend galas with your family. She fell on hard times after his passing, but you all. I glanced at the parents, then Harold. You all forgot her. The room went rigid. Marissa's mother gasped softly. Her father's jaw tightened. That's impossible. Eleanor. Marissa's eyes widened, her lips parting in disbelief. Dad, is that true? Her father said nothing. I slid the bank document across. This is the deed transfer. Eleanor signed her small house back to your family after debt swallowed everything else. And yet she's been driving a junk car, scraping by, while you all, I motioned to the gold-draped table, the chandelier, the endless wine drown in excess. Marissa's face broke. She turned on her parents. You knew? You let her live like that while you, her voice cracked, but she bit her lip hard, fighting tears. Harold sneered, but his voice trembled. You're trying to humiliate us. You think one act of charity makes you better than you? I cut in. My voice shook, but not with fear, with truth. No, it doesn't make me better, but it makes me human. That's something money can't buy back once you lose it. Silence again. Then Marissa stood. She pushed her chair back so hard it scraped the polished floor. Her eyes brimmed with anger and pain. I've been blind, she whispered. She looked at me, her voice steadier now. Ethan. I thought they just wanted the best for me. That their world of wealth and rules was normal. But tonight, she turned to her family, her voice rising. Tonight you showed me what you really value. Appearances. Power. Control. Not people. Not even your own. Her mother whispered, Marissa, don't. But Marissa cut her off. Don't tell me what to do. I love him because he's real. Because he cares. Because he sees people. I won't trade that for another hollow dinner under chandeliers. She walked around the table and slipped her hand into mine. And then she faced them all. If you can't accept Ethan, then you can't accept me. And I'm done begging for your approval. Her father's face turned red with fury. Marissa, don't you dare. But she didn't falter. She squeezed my hand tighter. You dared to forget Eleanor. You dared to test Ethan's worth with money. And you dared to think love could be bought. But love isn't a transaction. It's a choice. And tonight, I'm making mine. I felt the whole room sway, not physically, but like a storm had passed through and stripped the house of its glitter. Harold scoffed, pushing his chair back. Fine. Leave with him. Just don't come crawling back when you realize comfort matters more than some noble act. Marissa turned on him, her voice like fire. You'll never understand. Comfort isn't warmth. And money isn't love. I'd rather live in a small apartment with someone who'd stop for a stranger on the road than spend a lifetime in a mansion filled with people like you. Her words landed like knives. Harold's smirk died completely. Marissa tugged my hand. Come on, Ethan. We're done here. We walked toward the door. And for the first time all evening, I didn't feel like an outsider. I felt free. But just as we reached the door, a frail voice called out behind us. Marissa, Ethan. We turned. It was Marissa's grandmother. She'd been silent all evening, barely noticed among the chatter and wine. Her hands trembled as she leaned on her cane, but her eyes, wet and shining, were fixed on us. She smiled softly. Your love is the only thing in this house worth keeping. Go. Build a life on it. And never forget, you're richer than any of them. Marissa's throat caught, but she nodded. We stepped out into the night. The cold air hit, but it felt like freedom. I turned to her. Are you sure? Walking away from all of that, it won't be easy. She smiled through tears. Ethan, I don't need easy. I just need real. And you've already given me that. I pulled her close. The mansion loomed behind us, but it no longer mattered. Ahead was uncertainty, but it was ours. And in that moment, I realized something. I hadn't just passed their test. We had rewritten it.